If you look at big tech today, most of the conversation revolves around decline, disruption, and uncertainty. Apple is struggling to convince people that each new iPhone is truly worth upgrading to. Google's dominance in search is being questioned for the first time in decades. Amazon is under pressure from rising costs, shrinking margins, and a consumer that is no longer spending as freely as it once did. Even Meta had to gamble its entire future just to escape the damage caused by its own past. And yet, while all of these companies are fighting very public battles, Microsoft has been quietly winning in the background. Not with flashy product launches, not with viral moments, not with dramatic collapses or controversial headlines. Instead, Microsoft has been executing something far more dangerous and far more powerful. A slow, methodical takeover of the digital infrastructure that modern economies now depend on. To most people, Microsoft still feels like a boring company. It's Windows, it's Office, it's something you've used for years without really thinking about it. But that perception is exactly why Microsoft's transformation has gone largely unnoticed. Because while the public was distracted by smartphones, social media, and streaming wars, Microsoft was rebuilding itself into something far bigger than a software company. For a long time, Microsoft looked like a relic of the past. In the early 2000s, it was the undisputed king of technology. Windows ran the world. Office was installed on almost every computer. Internet Explorer dominated the web. But then the industry shifted. Apple reinvented consumer technology with the iPhone. Google became the gateway to the internet. Facebook reshaped communication. Amazon transformed retail and cloud computing. Compared to these fast-moving, consumer-focused giants, Microsoft began to feel slow, corporate, and out of touch. By the early 2000s, many investors and analysts believed Microsoft had missed its chance. The mobile revolution passed it by. Its stock barely moved for years. Developers preferred Apple and Google. Consumers stopped caring. Microsoft became known as the company of offices, governments, and large corporations. Important, but not exciting. And then in 2014, something happened that would quietly change the future of the company. Satya Nadella became CEO. At the time, it didn't feel like a turning point. There were no dramatic announcements, no radical public shifts, no viral moments that signaled a new era. But internally, Nadella made one of the most important strategic decisions in modern tech history. Microsoft would stop trying to be the center of the universe. Instead, it would become the platform that everyone else depended on, even its competitors. Rather than locking users into Microsoft-only systems, the company began opening up. It embraced cloud computing. It supported other platforms. It stopped treating Windows as the only product that mattered. What Microsoft was really doing was repositioning itself from a product company into an infrastructure company. That distinction is everything. Products are optional. Infrastructure is not. This is where Microsoft's real transformation began. While Amazon Web Services popularized cloud computing, Microsoft Azure quietly grew into one of the most important digital platforms on Earth. Today, governments, banks, hospitals, military contractors, and Fortune 500 companies run massive parts of their operations on Microsoft's cloud. These organizations are not choosing Azure because it's exciting. They choose it because once you move your systems there, leaving becomes extremely difficult, extremely expensive, and extremely risky. That's not innovation, that's dependency. Once Microsoft becomes embedded in an organization's systems, workflows, and security architecture, it stops being a vendor and starts being a foundation. This is the kind of power that doesn't show up in flashy consumer headlines, but it defines who really controls the digital economy. At the same time, Microsoft was tightening its grip on something even more personal, the modern workplace. Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneDrive, SharePoint, and especially Teams became the default digital environment for millions of companies. Then came the pandemic, and remote work turned these tools from convenience into necessity. Entire organizations began living inside Microsoft ecosystems. Meetings, documents, chats, workflows, and internal communication all flowed through Microsoft products. Once again, Microsoft didn't need people to love its tools, it just needed them to use them. And once a company standardizes on Microsoft, switching becomes a nightmare. Training costs, migration risks, compatibility issues, security concerns. The friction is so high that most companies simply stay. This is Microsoft's quiet genius. It doesn't win by excitement, it wins by integration. Then came the moment that may end up defining the next decade of technology: artificial intelligence. While Google hesitated, Apple stayed cautious, and Meta chased virtual worlds, Microsoft made one of the most strategically important bets in modern tech history. It partnered deeply with OpenAI. Not just as an investor, but as an infrastructure provider, platform partner, and distribution engine. This changed everything. ChatGPT runs on Microsoft Azure. Copilot is being embedded directly into Word, Excel, Outlook, Windows, and developer tools like GitHub. This means AI is no longer just an app or a website. It becomes part of how people actually work. It becomes part of emails, documents, spreadsheets, code, and internal processes. This is fundamentally different from how other tech companies approach AI. Google puts AI into search. Apple puts AI into devices. Microsoft puts AI into labor. That means companies are not just experimenting with AI, they are building workflows around it. And once those workflows depend on Microsoft-powered AI, the lock-in becomes even stronger. This also explains why Microsoft is structurally stronger than many of its peers. Apple depends heavily on consumers upgrading hardware. When spending slows, Apple feels it. Google depends on advertising and user trust in search. When that trust erodes, revenue is at risk. Amazon depends on retail margins and consumer behavior. When inflation rises and consumers cut back, Amazon suffers. Microsoft is different. Microsoft depends on long-term enterprise contracts, government agreements, and corporate IT budgets. These are not turned off easily. Even in economic downturns, companies may cancel subscriptions, reduce ad spending, or delay purchases, but they rarely shut down their core digital infrastructure. Turning off Microsoft is like turning off electricity. The business simply can't function. This makes Microsoft unusually resilient in uncertain economic times. It also makes it politically protected. Governments rely on Microsoft systems. Corporations depend on Microsoft infrastructure. Entire industries are built on Microsoft software and cloud services. That kind of dependency creates a form of quiet power that is far more durable than consumer popularity. And this is why Microsoft may now be the most strategically powerful company in big tech. Not because it has the coolest products, not because it dominates headlines, but because it controls the systems that everyone else builds on. However, this growing power is not without risk. As Microsoft becomes more central to cloud computing, AI infrastructure, and enterprise software, regulators will inevitably pay closer attention. Concentration of power, control over data, and dominance in critical digital infrastructure always attract political scrutiny. The same forces that eventually turned on Google, Meta, and Amazon could one day turn on Microsoft. There is also a deeper societal risk. If Microsoft-powered AI significantly boosts productivity while reducing the need for certain types of labor, public perception could shift. The company that is currently seen as a neutral, boring enterprise provider could become associated with job displacement and automation-driven inequality. That narrative has the potential to change how Microsoft is viewed almost overnight. For now, though, Microsoft sits in an incredibly powerful position. We are entering a world where work is digital by default, where AI is integrated into everyday tasks, where infrastructure is invisible, and where data flows through centralized platforms. That world is perfectly designed for Microsoft's business model. Not because Microsoft is the most exciting company, but because it is the most embedded. The era of big tech, driven purely by attention, is slowly ending. The next era is about control. Control of work, control of infrastructure, control of AI distribution, and control of enterprise systems. And in that world, Microsoft may quietly become the most powerful tech company on Earth. Not through headlines, not through hype, but through something far more enduring: being everywhere, hidden in plain sight. In the next video, we're going to look at another tech giant that appears strong on the surface, but may be facing deeper structural problems than most people realize, because not every company adapts as quietly or as successfully as Microsoft has. If you want to understand where big tech is really headed, make sure you're subscribed. The next story might completely change how you see the tech industry.